Hey guys, welcome back to the Purpose of Money podcast. I'm super excited because today we are with Dionne Payn. She is an amazing woman who founded Women for Homes, a company whose mission is to inspire 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030. She has 10 years of experience in the real estate and development space, and she's developed affordable housing projects, raised over $45 million on ethical property developments, and has helped 40 investors achieve double-digit returns. She is going to tell us today how she did it and also give us some insight into her #1 best-selling book, Ethical Property Investing, and how she regularly writes about these topics and speaks on this so you can be empowered to invest, develop, and make money too. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. It's been a good day so far, and it's getting better all the time.
I love it. I'm excited to have this conversation because you and I met through another person that I helped with their finances. And I'm so excited to have the ability to talk about your latest project, which I'm excited because it is global. It is going to have a global impact. So before we hop into all of that, I want to first talk about what was money like for you when you were growing up? This is a signature question I ask all my guests, but it's important to understand your relationship with money before we get into how you are making money.
Yeah, look, that is a great question, and you're right. It's kind of the foundation of our money journey the whole way through, you know. So my money story when I was young, I'm the eldest of 6 kids. Um, Born to Jamaican parents who had migrated to the UK. So money was tight. It was really tight. And I remember the experience of growing up and seeing all of my friends having stuff that I didn't have. And it was really uncomfortable. So that was, yeah, it was, I just found that really hard. And when I always thought, one day I'm going to have my own money and, I'm not going to do this to my kids. And so, moved to the other side of the world. I now live in Australia, and it's a beautiful place to live. So where I was living in the UK was, sort of on the outer skirts of the city, kind of suburbia, but quite urban as well. Yeah, now we live in a beautiful rural setting. It's really green and lovely, and there's not that many people, and people aren't living on top of each other. So, all of the things that I had when I was growing up, I've made sure that my kids don't have the same. However, I don't have anything against the way that I grew up or the values that I got when I was growing up, because they've been really important in shaping my journey so far. So I have a lot of gratitude for the sacrifices that my parents made to get me to where I am now, and all I want for my kids is that they get to build on sort of what we've done and just go into the world and be awesome humans first of all, but also just know that all of those lies that we were told about money, that I was told about money when I was growing up, around money doesn't grow on trees and it's really hard to get and you've got to suffer to get money and rich people are bad and all of that. It's just, for them, they don't have that in their consciousness, which is something that I've worked really hard to ensure for them.
I love that. I think that's such a good perspective. And especially, you didn't mention it, but you did mention it. Like, you're a first generation immigrant, right? Like, my dad was born in Panama and then went to New York at 6 and had to learn how to live life in America, right? And my mom is straight out of Brooklyn. So I am like the first generation who raised fully in the United States, then had to, get all the degrees because my immigrant family, that's what they said, like, get an education and then that'll lead to your ability to get all this money. And I'm like, there are a lot of wealthy people who don't get an education, but I get what you're saying, right? So that's another layer of pressure that, like, we don't always talk about, but it's so real.
And that part where, like my nan always used to say this, you've got to work harder than everybody else to be able to get an equal footing. And even then you're not equal. Far
Mm.
out. That's I can just see like my whole life I've had this like, I've got to work hard, I've got to work hard. And I put so much pressure on myself. And I'm just sort of starting to see that now and going, okay, there's a better way to do this.
Yeah, yeah, work smarter, not harder. Absolutely. So now that you are grown, busy, and booked, let's talk about what you're working on because I am so intrigued by your passion to not only end homelessness, right? But also make it at an affordable entry point that almost anyone can achieve, right? With the right help and support you can come up with
Yeah.
$5,000. At least I know my people can. So tell me, how did you get to the point where this became the passionate goal that you want 1 million women to do, and why? Did you personally ever experience homelessness? How did this become such an important topic for you?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm like in my head, I'm like, okay, where do I start? So
Wherever you want.
it was good that you brought up actually, what my money story was as I was growing up, because that has been absolutely the guiding force to this, and I can see all the ways in what I do now that how I grew up helped. So I've been really blessed. I've always had a stable place to live, and so that's never been an issue for me. I've never been homeless, but that part of my story is that my family are religious, and so along with all of those money stories that I gained, I also have this really strong service ethic as well. And I had connected that in my mind as to, okay, to be in service is to not have much money. That was my connection. So I did all the right things, listened to my nan, I worked hard, I got a PhD, I got educated, and I loved what I did in terms of the PhD. I loved that journey. But when it came to the end, I got really disillusioned with academia. I had this perspective that it was something that actually it wasn't. I thought it was a job for life. It was going to be really secure, and it wasn't. And at that time, by the time I'd finished, I was childbearing age, and I just knew that if I really pursued that, and sort of put my career first, then I might delay having children or not be able to have children at all. So I purposely had a break and just went, okay, I'm going to have kids and then I'm going to figure out the rest. So I had kids, and then the situation for me was that I wanted to live in a beautiful rural setting. We were renting a house at the time, which was beautiful, and I wanted to be able to buy it, and it was actually up for sale, but we couldn't afford it because my husband was working and we had one income, and I was home with the kids. So I just thought, if I can understand the game of money, if I can understand the game of property, then I can get to what I want. And I'm not afraid to do education. I'm a perpetual learner. So, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn how to do this development game. So that's what we did. We did a mentoring program with an educator, and got into our first property development, which was really small. And the beautiful thing about that was that I learned, we often have this, somebody has called it the illusion of limited resources. So if I don't have it, then it's not going to happen for me. Whereas with that, I remember the educator actually saying things like, money is everywhere. And I'm like, is it? Where is it? But we actually joined forces with somebody that had a lot of money, but didn't have the time to do development. And we had lots of time, but we didn't have the lots of money part. So we joined forces. And so that was a really important lesson for me as well. It's like, if you combine, if you pool resources, then you can get to what you want. So we did a few small developments, and that was fun actually, because a lot less responsibility, and I didn't realize at the time, but in hindsight, I'm like, it was a lot less responsibility. We were just basically buying houses, subdividing them, renovating them, and then selling two separate either properties or land. And that was a really great outcome. So we could have done that forever, but me being ambitious, I was like, right, let's go bigger. So I saw this piece of land, and it had development approval for 14 one-bedroom townhouses. So this is about 4 projects in, and I thought, right, okay, I know how to do financial feasibilities. I can work this out. So I did, and brought on more partners, different partners this time, and we built 14, and they were for affordable housing. We worked with a community housing provider, which is basically an organization that provides low cost housing for people. We worked together again, so that collaboration is like, okay, we can make this work. And at the end of that project, we made a good return, but we also had a big community benefit. So for me, that just ticked all the boxes in terms of, okay, I can be of service. I can provide affordable housing in an area where house prices are quite chunky. But also I can be of service in the community and make a good return. So that was kind of aligning all of those different things. And I was like, yeah, I feel really fulfilled. Actually, the project itself was really stressful. It was good, but also there were some really hard points of it as well. So it took me a long time to realize that actually development wasn't my path, but the capital raising aspect was. And so that's when I started. I joined forces with a developer. He had an awesome track record, over 30 years of experience, and he'd done heaps. So I raised capital for him, but right at the beginning, it was like, okay, I want that experience again in terms of I want to be of service and also make money. So if you're doing affordable, sustainable, inclusive housing, I will raise for you any day of the week. And so that's how my company started, High Impact Property Investments. So that's, been raising capital for other developers over this period of time, which has been great.
All right, so that's awesome. And I love the fact that you kind of figured out pretty quickly what you like to do and what you don't like to do, but still stay in your lane. I love when people can find ways to do what they're passionate about, but then also, that fills their need to serve, their desire to help people and make an impact. So I love what you said. I'm really curious to understand, what are some of the challenges that you experience in this space? Because I've never really talked about development. And in the US, we mostly think about apartment syndications and buying these subdivisions and then renting them out. And when we say affordable housing, it's normally housing subsidized by the
Mm,
government. And you're making sure you provide so many units where vouchers or anyone who's on some type of assistance program can live. But I liked what you said about you partner with an organization first, so they identify the people and you provide the housing. But what are some other challenges that you face when you're doing these projects?
yeah, look, there's lots of layers that I can talk from. So development itself, I just found it very. We have a saying in Australia, blokey. It was very male dominated. And that was difficult because at that time, particularly that affordable housing project that I did, I felt that I lost myself a little bit. I sort of went away from my own values to try and fit into this world that, sometimes when you feel that you don't belong and you try harder, like I was definitely doing that. And I just got to the point where I was like, oh, I don't even like myself for how I'm acting. And because that's not the way I act. Development, because it is so it's so high risk actually, and you've got to have everything aligned, you've got to have everybody working on time, because if there's a time delay, then that costs money. And then if you're paying you're paying a chunky interest rate on a large amount of money, so the risk is really great. So I can understand why developers have this reputation of being really hard nosed and just like almost bullying, like you've just got to do this at this time. But that's not me. So that was the biggest challenge that I had. And I think particularly after that project, the 14 townhouse project, I think I went into a depression. I didn't realize it at the time, but now looking back, it was just like, oh, I'm so acting against myself that it just didn't make sense. So that was a really big challenge. So if anybody is interested in doing development, I would say you've got to find a way to do it where you can be yourself. I didn't find it in that way, and I decided to change gears, which was great. And I'm definitely on the right path. But yeah, just don't lose yourself in that process, because at the end of the day, you won't like yourself very much, and that's no good for anybody.
That's so good. I appreciate the transparency and the vulnerability. It's not always easy for us as women to admit when we go through things, or even to recognize what it is, because we're taught to
Mm,
work hard and bear through it, and like, you can do it, just stay strong. And sometimes you're like, no, this is not me. Like something is not where it needs to be. And I'm glad that you found your way back to what does make you happy, but then also staying in this space. So I really do like that. So tell us a little bit more specifically about Women for Homes and your mission to inspire 1 million women to invest $5,000. What is this project? What does that 5,000 do? And what do you want the ultimate impact to be?
Now, can you tell that this part makes me happy? And this wasn't where I started. So I was quite, sort of trundling along with high impact property investments. So I was getting some runs on the board. And then at the end of last year, so November 2024, I went to a retreat, and it was a personal branding and marketing retreat. And I didn't even really know why I was there. I kind of went because I liked the lady who was running it. And, we'd done a little bit of work before, but I was like, oh, this is a bit of a jolly. I don't know if I need to do this. But there was the sort of intuition was, go, it's going to be really good for you. I had no idea how good it was going to be. So we went, and we did, like, personal development as part of this process, but also because the lady, and her name is Prue Adja Stedman. So anybody that needs branding photos done, go look for her because she's awesome. But yeah, so she just created this really lovely container where 12 women came together. We were nourished, like food wise. We were in this beautiful location. We were doing some personal development work and really looking at, well, what's our motivation? And then at the end of it, she did our headshots. So I got some really amazing headshots. But that was probably the biggest reason that I was there, actually, because I was like, I'm going to get some amazing headshots. But what I also got out of it was just this real inspiration to do more, go bigger. And I remember sitting there and just going, I don't know how I can go bigger on this. But all the way through that retreat, women were coming up to me and saying, love what you do. We really want to get involved. How can we do that? And I just knew that the minimum investments through high impact property investments is $50,000. And I knew that not all of them would be at that stage. And it kind of really niggled me after the event. And I just, sort of, again, that intuition, it was like, okay, I need to make this investing more accessible. And I've always had this thing. Part of the reason that I wrote the book as well, which I'll show you here. I know it's backwards, but it says Ethical Property Investing and the Busy Professional's Guide to Double-Digit Returns Through Affordable and Sustainable Homes. So that was my experience of getting double-digit returns through creating affordable housing. And so I really wanted to share that. And I do have this belief that if we're going to solve this chunky problem called homelessness, and we need to do it in a way where it's a win-win-win. So, people that are investing are getting a good return. People that are ending up with homes are given beautiful homes that they feel comfortable with, at a price that they can afford. And that, sort of the general society benefits, it has to be that win-win-win, because if there's a win-lose in that frame anywhere, then it just doesn't work. And that's why, people get so caught up in, oh, I don't want affordable housing because it might create a ghetto and then my house price is going to go down. So unless we create that win-win-win, like I said, it's just not going to work. So that was something that was important to me. And that just kept nagging me at the end of this retreat, because I was like, I'm not actually creating the win-win-win here. I'm creating partly wins, but there's a whole group of people that could benefit from this and do deserve to achieve double-digit returns and can be part of the solution. So I was really motivated for that. So this kind of real intuitive hit was, I need to create something that's way more accessible, that anybody could be a part of. So that was where Women for Homes was born. And when I felt into, well, what do I want to do? And it was just like, just work with women. Now, I'm not a man hater. It's not about that. But there are a certain set of circumstances and some systemic barriers that are causing an increase in women at risk of homelessness. And I really wanted to address that. So with Women for Homes, there's the investment, and yes, you can invest $5,000 and we invest into projects that increase the supply of affordable housing. But also, and I love this part, I started a podcast called Financially Empowered Women, because when I looked at, I was doing my business plan and I was looking at, well, why are women ending up homeless in the first place? And you've got the gender pay gap, and what's interesting is that everybody starts off, male and female start off at the same sort of pay when they come out of college or when they start their working career. But then there's a widening gap over time. And so things like taking time out of the workforce to have children, then that means that you've got less savings to put into superannuation, which then means that your retirement, pot is less. And then you throw in a divorce or a separation, and then that's why women are ending up at risk of homelessness, because the amount of money that they've got to retire on is much less than if they'd not taken any time out of the workforce at all. So I looked at that and just thought, well, I can't just have this, come and invest in this if I don't address this first. And that was where the Financially Empowered Women podcast came in. And I knew that I did not have the skills to be talking about how to help women be financially empowered. I can talk about the investment part, but there's so much to it. It's like, how do you negotiate a better career? How do you manage your superannuation? How do you, like what happens when you separate? How do you ensure that the assets are distributed fairly and that everybody's looked after? So, so I get to talk to these really amazing women, and I know that you're going to be on the podcast at one point as well. So that's great. But yeah, and it's just this thing about working with women. It's not that all humans don't have the same challenges, but the system is very definitely geared towards or away from women at the moment. So I just see it as a level playing field. And, part of my journey as a first generation Jamaican UK immigrant, I've sort of witnessed the effect that inequality has on people and on societies. And I just think, housing is one of those things that is a basic human right. If we can have equality in housing, then we've got a platform to be able to have equality everywhere. So, there's so many people that are disadvantaged, like single parents with children, older single women, young people starting out and trying to buy homes. So many people are being disadvantaged. And so if we can get the housing piece right, there's definitely more to do, but let's get the housing piece right. That's where my passion is. That's where I can help. That's where I can contribute. So that's really my motivation. So that was a really long answer. Have I covered everything?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You did cover everything. So basically, just to recap for those who are following with us and just tuning in, Women for Homes is a platform that you're making investing in the mission to end homelessness easier. And you're allowing the threshold to get in to be as low as $5,000. Now, are we able to support you right now? Is the website ready to go? Is the fund ready to receive? Let me know all the details, because I'm always looking for my next investment.
Yes, so it's not quite ready to go, but within the next week it will be ready to go. So I'll be able to share the details with you then. And we're starting really small, actually. We're starting with a syndicate lending platform. And the reason for that is that it just gets us started, it gets some runs on the board, and then we can roll into a retail fund later on. So yeah, that's going to be ready in the next week. We've got a project. We've got a project that's ready to go. And part of my motivation for all of this is to make it as safe as possible for people to get involved, because we have a TV show over here called A Current Affair, and it's one of those kind of expose things. And I'm like, I never want to end up on that.
None of us do. But okay, so let's dive deeper for those who may not be familiar with. You said
Yeah.
called it syndicate lending, right? Is that the term? So what exactly is syndicate lending, and how does it work?
Yeah, cool. So the banks do this all the time. So to split the risk of lending money to an organization, they will come together. They will bring other banks together and say, okay, well, we'll put in this much, you put in this much, until they get to the amount of money that that organization needs, and then they lend the money. So we're just doing what the banks are doing, but on a smaller scale. So the banks would not be faffing around with $5,000, but we are, because it's that thing of making it accessible. So I'll tell you about this first project as well. So it's a housing cooperative, which is quite a different way of developing homes, but it's run by a charity, and it's making housing affordable. Now they've got a basically a retirement village that they're doing. So there's 25 homes. It's not the same as a retirement village that, the sort of typical ones. But basically people get to purchase into the home. The charity owns the land, but the occupants own the home. And it's really fair. So people that can pay more do. People that can't pay as much pay what they can. But the facilities are shared. The decision making is equal. So it doesn't matter, even if somebody's put in more money than somebody else, the decision making is equal. It doesn't matter if somebody owns the home or somebody's renting, the decision making is equal. And it's really about building community, reducing loneliness, because that's one of the key things about, sort of getting older, is like your circle becomes narrower, and therefore, loneliness increases, and that's a really big epidemic that's on the rise. So loneliness is overcome, the sharing of resources, which is beautiful because, like, it's so funny when I see, like lots of houses really close together and they've all got their lawnmowers and, they've all got like all their bits where if they came together as a community and went, okay, well, we'll share the use of this and we'll share the maintenance of this, and then we can come together. So this is basically what they're doing in this housing cooperative, and I just think it's really beautiful. So when I was approached to help them raise, I was like, absolutely. And part of the safety of this is that there's a philanthropic organisation that's involved as well. So they're lending a larger chunk of the money, and we're just lending the top-up funds for them. So it's actually the philanthropic capital that takes the hit. We call that first loss capital. And our capital is protected, and there's a whole mechanism behind it, which I've got I'm putting together the information now, which we'll talk about how that mechanism and lawyers' trust accounts and all of that. So I've just tried to make it as safe as possible, as low risk as possible, but as accessible as possible.
I love that. I love that. Now, please understand, guys, this is not risk free on guaranteed returns money, but it is definitely one where she's done her due diligence to make sure that the money raised goes to the causes that she's telling you they're going to, and that you're able to see that return come back to you when the project is completed.
Yes. So this first project, the target return on this is 10% per annum, and the length of time that the money is required for is 12 months. Yeah.
Excellent. So short-term investment, which is really hard to come by when you think about the real estate space, unless you are fixing and flipping. And then you're also allowing this lower buy-in, but a good return on money in 12 months. So I love to hear all of that. We'll definitely share the link to your website and how people can connect with you in our show notes. But the name of the show is called The Purpose of Money. And I ask all of my guests, what is their purpose for money? So what's yours?
Ooh. I recently uncovered a sort of limiting belief that I had, and we're talking like in the last 2 weeks, and the limiting belief was God loves people who suffer. So this is a hangover from my religious childhood days, and sort of bringing that up was like, what? I didn't see that one coming. I don't even know why I'm mentioning that, but I just have this new awareness now of the purpose of money is to be recycled and make everybody's life better. So that doesn't exclude me. It's definitely about making my life better, and being abundant just means that I can help more people. And actually, the greatest joy of my life is helping more people. So yeah, that's the purpose
That's
of
a
money
good
for me.
answer. That's a
Yeah.
good purpose for your money. That's a great answer. And you are walking out that in your life by what you're doing here and now. I am so grateful. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Guys, if you are interested, please make sure to check out the notes and also check out her #1 best-selling book, Ethical Property Investing. I know that I am, and I'll make sure to include links so you guys can connect. You guys know what to do. Until next time, keep building generational wealth. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Purpose of Money podcast.